Hi everyone, welcome to the webinar series of Defending Democracy in the Civic Space in Asia. My name is Aoi Horiuchi. I'm a senior advocacy officer of Japan and the Center for International Cooperation, and also vice chair of Think Lobby, the organizer of this event. Before we start, I'd like to give you some housekeeping rules. Please keep your microphone off when you are not speaking, and please turn on your video on if available so that we can have a better conversation. Please use chat box to ask questions to speakers. The presentation material, reports, and video recordings will be uploaded at the Synchrobit website. And please join the webinar series on November and December. I'm going to explain later. And finally, your active participation is most welcome. Please enjoy discussion with speakers. Okay, now let us start the webinar. Once again, this is the webinar series which is called Defending Democracy and Civic Space in Asia. The idea is that JANIC organizations has organized Tokyo Democracy Forum, in short TDF, with partners such as Asia Democracy Network, ADN, Asia Development Alliance, ADA, and Community of Democracies, COD, since 2019. This is actually the year that Japanese government hosted G20 summit in Osaka. So we hosted the first Tokyo Democracy Forum in line with the G20 summit. This is held in order to promote SE16 plus and democratic governance, learn and interact with each other, especially the civil society in Asia. And last year in 2022, JANIC came up with 6 CSOs in Asia to start project defending democracy and civic space in Asia. And that project research results were reported at the fourth Tokyo Democracy Forum in April 2023. So this project includes the following themes, which I'm going to explain later. And this year, after the fourth Tokyo Democracy Forum, we once again cooperate with the same 6 organizations to continue joint research to promote better democratic governance and expansion of civic space in Asia. So, Tokyo Democracy Forum and defending democracy and civic space in Asia is actually the project run by JANIC, but in cooperation with other organizations. The original idea just started in 2018 when the Busan Democracy Forum was hosted in South Korea by Committee of Democracy and Asia Democracy Network. And after that, there's a Ulaanbaatar Democracy Forum and Tokyo Democracy Forum in 2019. There's a second Busan Democracy Forum. And after the COVID-19 pandemic, we organized the online Democracy Forum. The first one is Kathmandu Democracy Forum in 2020. And Busan Democracy Forum was also held. The Tokyo Democracy Forum was also going in the virtual format in 2021. And we also have Asia Africa Democracy Forum. So the last year, the third Tokyo Democracy Forum was held in virtual. And in April this year, the fourth Democracy Forum was actually held in face-to-face format as well as a hybrid mode. And at the past Tokyo Democracy Forum in 2021 and 2022, we adopted 10 recommendations for actions based on the research results and presentations by the speakers and the partners. Those 10 recommendations including the protecting fundamental freedom or basic economic and social rights of the vulnerable people, internet freedom or vaccine inequalities, ensuring civic space, transparency, and accountability. You can also download the material, 10 recommendations for action to the Think Lobby website. So the latest Tokyo Democracy Forum in 2023 was held in April. Again, this is actually happened in line with C7 in Japan. We invited 6 key implementing partners from India, Mongolia, Nepal, Pakistan, and two more organizations from Bangkok and Nepal, Thailand and Nepal. So BANI, Voluntary Action Network in India, presented a strong partnership through promoting FP16 among Indian CSOs for enabling civic space. And Center for Human Rights and Development from Mongolia, who Urna is actually attending today, presented and defending democracy and civic space in Mongolia. Actually, this is a civic space survey in Mongolia. And NGO Federation of Nepal presented study on taxation implications on NGO networking environment in Nepal. And our CDF Pakistan presented enhancing civil society engagement for civic space in Pakistan. And Asia Center, which is based in Bangkok, just presented campaign to push back on foreign interference law in Southeast Asia. And INHURED International, which is whose president is Gopal, who is speaking today. He presented defining and defending human rights mechanisms, revisiting jurisdictions and legitimate of legal mechanisms. And this year, as I explained, we team up with the same six organizations from Asia. And those six organizations are now conducting researches, which is actually shown in the screen. So we are going to organize a series of webinars to update and present the research, the project, and we can discuss how we can better use the results and use how we can use the materials which is actually produced through the project. So today is the first webinar inviting Mr. Gopal, Dr. Gopal Krishna Siwakoti from INHURED International, and he's going to speak about climate calamity, access to justice for loss and damage. So Gopal, you may have about 30 minutes to present.
All right. Thank you very much, Aoi, and very good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and even I think I can see one or two people who are still awake at the middle of the night in North America. First of all, I am so grateful that JANIC this time permitted to conduct a research on very pressing issues of the contemporary critical concern, which is about climate calamity. Which we have started experiencing across the globe. And but this time today, I'm not going to speak about the impact, only the impact of the climate change, because most of us already have been either exposed or with the information, or even with have started experiencing the adversarial impact of the climate change. But the most pressing issue is about how to access justice to loss and damage caused because of the climate calamity, because of the global warming, because of the environmental degradation, for which the so-called wealthier countries or richer countries or countries in the West are largely responsible, or probably 99% plus responsible to cause the loss and the damage. So where do we stand? What are the mechanisms so far, in place with regards to the loss and damage and climate change? So I'm going to share my slide now, and I'm told that I have 30 minutes, for my presentation. Well, again, as I mentioned earlier, that there is a massive and legitimate, kind of demand or urge to seek justice on loss and damage. Time is running out because every minute there have been more loss and more damage because the impact of the climate change, the negative impact is so visible everywhere. And just 1 degree Celsius of global warming is causing this magnitude of damage. Means we can see what is going to happen with regards to the human rights violation of the victims, because access to justice on the issue of climate change is very rare in this part of the world. There are some mechanisms in Europe, there are some mechanisms in other parts of the world, but particularly in Asia, in South Asia, even in Southeast Asia, the issue of seeking remedy at the domestic level is very rare. And even globally, yes, there has been some exercises going on as part of the UNFCCC, but nothing as such with regards to reparation, in terms of monetary compensation or adaptation or mitigation process, particularly focusing on loss and damage. It's just growing, but it is yet to get the level of maturity. I'm just showing this particular slide for you, simply just to show you the gravity of the crisis. Like, for example, if you were born in 1950, so this is the color you're going to get. You are getting redder. If you were born in 1980, you are getting, and you are 70 years old. Now look at the color. And if you are born in 2020, means 3 years ago, then in 2090, you're going to become like this. You will be like the hottest person on earth. So this is how the global warming is increasing. So that means the issue of loss and damage and the issue of seeking justice is so eminent, so urgent, that this needs to be corrected. This needs to be rectified well in advance. Otherwise, the person who, like the child born in 2020, which is going to look like when he or she is 70 years old, he's going to look like this. He's going to look like this. It's just a cautionary note only. All right, loss and damage. There is no proper official and one definition derived as such, but according to the UNFCCC, which is UN Framework Convention on Climate Change, which was established in 1992, but in 2012, after so many years, they derived this particular definition, which says the actual and or potential manifestation of impacts associated with climate change in developing countries. Look here again, the developing countries that negatively affect human and natural system. So this is shown as a part of the economic loss, as part of the loss of or damage to non-economic sector, including like the society, individual, and environment. And then the extreme weather events taking place both in the as a part of slow onset and rapid onset. And we can see the sea level rise, increasing temperature, land and forest degradation, loss of land, desertification, glacier lake outburst flood, and loss of biodiversity and everything like acidification of the ocean, everything. So these are just to give some highlight, okay? But I'm not going to discuss more on this. I'm going to discuss more on this, particularly with regards to how we perceive loss and damage in terms of impact of climate change. Yes, there are different perception growing, but this one I particularly like the second one, which is in red. Loss can be characterized as negative impacts that cannot be repaired or restored, such as loss of geological freshwater resources related to glacial melt or desertification, or loss of culture and heritage, post-migration, etc. So it's loss. So this loss is, of course, is twinned with damage. So for that, simple adaptation is not a remedy. It needs justice. It needs reparation in that sense. So reparation through justice. And now there is an alarming example of how the UNFCCC came up with loss and damage kind of monetary data, that from the sea level rise and land loss alone, only two components have been identified, that US dollar 427 billion market, US dollar 427 billion by 2100, means in another 77 years. That came up from the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, which is known as IPCC, and this is the latest one, 2023. So it shows that now altogether 100 million has been promised, for loss and damage recovery, but now already 427 billions of loss has been already recorded so far. So we can see how the pace of loss and damage and the progress for reparation in terms of monetary support, it has been promised. So we are almost like four times less than what has been already lost and damage has been caused. So loss and damage here means once again it stresses that mitigation and adaptation are one part. Those are basically the duties and obligation of the states, particularly on local adaptation plans of action and national adaptation plans of action. Many countries have already derived those plans of action at domestic level, and some states have already have got the policies and instruments which has been regulated by UNFCCC in order to stabilize the greenhouse gas concentration. But again, the adaptation part largely is the duty of the home constituencies. So again, here loss loss cannot be recovered, but there has been damage that can be recovered, of course, but through proper, precise, smart, dedicated, fund-based recovery process. So this is just for the understanding that I just wanted to highlight on particular this through this slide. Okay, loss and damage. There are these are just the activities illustrations. Like what happens? What happens? Where does it hit? It hits transportation. It hits on renewable energy. Because if there is no efficiency on energy, that means there is more loss. If you do not reduce the risk in terms of water and energy conservation, if there is no thrifty measures applied, then it's gonna hit more on water and energy conservation again. And if you do not control the flood, there will be more damage. If you do not have a proper, precise kind of intervention on disaster risk management, then there will be more loss caused. So again, there are the processes like this. Okay, mitigation, adaptation, and because there are still residual risk associated with that. So for that, first we need to like the whole L&D means averting first, means avoiding, then or preempting that, and if it happens, then minimization process should be in place, and then addressing if there are like damages already seen, then addressing that through maybe social protection insurance or other contingency fund or other kind of fund-based or resource-based intervention. There is a timeline actually. In the case of loss and damage, there has been some progress already, and this is a bright side of what the world has started witnessing. If you look at 1991, the timeline that in Vanuatu, small island proposal to include insurance mechanism to the cost of the climate change. This is one. They started in 1991 already, and 2007. The Conference of the Parties 13 as part of the UNFCCC in Bali called for understanding of risk management and risk sharing and transfer. And then 2010, COP26 in Cancun, Mexico, launched a world program for enhanced understanding of loss and damage. And 2013 in Warsaw, they established a landmark kind of document, which is called Warsaw International Mechanism on Loss and Damage, in short is called WIM. So this was a major breakthrough, and then came to Paris Agreement in order to recognize the loss and damage as a separate article in the agreement as such, which is part of the Article 8. 2019, there has been more progress in Madrid, which is part of the COP25 that established Santiago Network on Loss and Damage. So this is about voluntary network for technical support. So the technical support, more like creation of task force and other mechanisms were built up there. And 2022, which was last year, COP27, in Sharm el-Sheikh in Egypt, established loss and fund. Now this is the progress. We can see progress graph about fund arrangement to make it operational by COP 2028, which is going to take place in UAE. Okay, so there has been an agreement to establish the loss and damage fund and funding arrangement, but the entire arrangement procedures, the terms of reference, the operational mechanism, means modus operandi, is yet to be finalized. There are different ideas, different thoughts coming up. Okay, those are like this, because there have been 4 different proposals as part of the loss and damage funding arrangements. One is about loss and damage fund as an operating entity of the financial mechanism. That was this was the part of the China's position on this. The second is about fund as a window under the Green Climate Fund, GCF, or hosted under the GCP. That is the second proposal. Then the third proposal is loss and damage fund as a trust fund under the Global Environment Facility, GEF. I think most of us are familiar with this GEF, which has been established long time back. And the last, but the least one, the option 4 is about loss and damage fund under existing institutions outside of the UNFCCC. So not part of the UNFCCC process, but outside. So these are the 4 different proposals which has been floated around, but there has not been proper or concrete agreement yet, which needs to be finalized during COP28 in UAE. So the transitional committee has been formed in 2023. So that will recommend 4 elements on this, what we call this CMA 5, we call it CMA 5, means Conference of the Parties, serving as the meeting of the parties to the Paris Agreement. So CMA 5 in Dubai, which will take place from 30 November to 12 December. It is going to be very, very crucial, because if there will be a breakthrough with regards to the operationalization of the promised funding of 100 million, is $100 billion is already something to start with. So this is the time that the climate experts, activists, civil society organizations needs to be engaged in terms of research, education, advocacy, and campaign for towards the developing the modality, structure, governance, and the terms of reference of the fund. And it's still promising a fund is something, but where is the source? That is something different. So what are the countries? Which are the countries who are now willing to contribute to this basket funding approach? So there's still a debate going on about how to coordinate and complement between the existing funding arrangement, because there has been some funding for adaptation or mitigation kind of thing, but how to make it as a comprehensive basket fund, so that everyone who have been the victims of the loss and damage will have a fair or proportionate access. All right, so look at this particular slide, the last one. Look about like averting loss and damage and minimizing loss and damage. These are the 2 2 columns you can see, and addressing loss and damage. Here on the other side, there has been basically no funding. There is a limited funding for something, but there is no funding for others. But when you look at the averting loss and damage and minimizing loss and damage, there has been some dedicated but insufficient funding. So this is the general scenario, because we can go for a longer discussion on this, but this is just, I want to share with you that basically for like humanitarian assistance, relief, recovery, reconstruction, rehabilitation, there is certain degree of funding available. But with regards to loss of culture, loss of heritage, loss of territory, loss of biodiversity, extinction of species, etc., those are permanent. And irrecoverable losses, there has not been any funding dedicated so far. So this is quite worrying. I'm going to go to loss and fund attainment 2028. 2028 is, again, as I mentioned, Dubai, is the COP28 is a kind of, milestone, set for this. So look, but there are, very critical questions for soul searching, and for every civil society organization, individual who are working on climate issues, or other institutions and experts and stakeholders, that these are the questions that needs to be resolved. For example, in terms of institutional setup, where should the L&D fund sit? Where should be its location? Where? That's number one in terms of physical location also. And what is the second is the scope of fund. What will loss and damage fund support for? Like what? Extreme weather, slow onset, rapid onset, cultural heritage, saving lives, saving properties. What are the areas that will be focused? And the third one is, again, the question is source of finance. Where does the money come from? As I've already mentioned about that. Making plays is one thing, commitment is one thing, but actually opening the purse is something, different. So are the states ready to open the purse? Who are they? If they are, who are they? Right. And in terms of governance, what would be the size of the board? What would be the resident of the board? Which country our continent they represent? And what would be the mandate and scope of the board? Okay. And then financing instrument. Is it going to be grant based? Is it going to be concessional loan? Is it going to be part of the bonds? Okay. So it is a free hand kind of support investment, or are any conditionalities attached on that? Okay. And the last one, the question is eligibility and access. Who receives the fund? Who receives? Okay. How are the countries selected for that? Is there a priority on that, or is there a proportionate funding on the magnitude after assessing the magnitude of the crisis in those particular countries? And so what are the eligibility? Who determines the eligibility, etc.? What are the protocols, or the criteria or benchmarks to be set? So these are not finalized yet in the COP27. So the COP28 is the arrangement or the gathering that is supposed to finalize this thing. Okay. So there are so many challenges before that, because first of all, the whole world should now attribute or understand and acknowledge that there is loss and damage being caused, is visible. Second, now there has not been proper data exploration and availability in terms of loss and damage, both qualitative and quantitative, and then and also in terms of direct impact and indirect impacts also, because some of the impacts are not visible and some of the impacts are visible, but those long-term slow onset impacts are so deadly. Like desertification, for example, takes a long period of time, right? Or snow melting or ice melting, but flood, for example, or hurricane, etc., are so direct, for example, or tsunami. And so there has not been proper educated action on mitigation and adaptation. That is the reality. And cost of adaptation has not been, in terms of loss and damage, has not been properly assessed, and then foreseeable loss and damage that will be avoided through successful mitigation and adaptation, and foreseeable loss and damage cannot be won't be avoided without resources. Again, without resources. It's not only a talk show. It needs political will, it needs generosity, it needs accountability, it needs responsibility demonstrated, and with strategic adaptation policy. Unless that is being done, avoiding the loss and damage, it will be a distant reality. So time has come to explore justice. There are some avenues, there are some ways, there are some processes and methods that needs to be understood, right? And first of all, we need to understand that climate change is a transnational or cross-border problem. It is not limited to a domestic affair alone. So it requires transnational solution. Means global solutions is required. 100 billion, as I already mentioned, but nothing in operation. And from financial, governance, and institutional arrangements, particularly in the developing countries, those are not been comprehensively addressed. So that is what is a matter of urgency. So, and the third one is about again, loss and damage. Things are understood, and even if there have been some, some certain degree of support, those are not systematic, and those are not equal, and those are not fair in terms of sectors and regions and systems. Okay, and as long as there is no, okay, this thing is, I think, very important. There should have been some kind of case law, because we are talking about seeking justice, probably through domestic court or regional court or even international court. So, so for the protection, obligation, equality, and fair justice, some sort of authoritative global case law. Building of a case law is so important. Some kind of jurisprudence should be established in order to seek justice. And there is a good news on the part of the United Nations Human Rights Council that has, for the first time, recognized the right to a clean, healthy, and sustainable environment as a universal human rights. This is one thing. And secondly, the United Nations General Assembly resolution of July 2022 says the loss and damage, progress and loss and damage is a game-changing development, because the resolution itself is a game-changing development, because it has been under the custody and the radar of the United Nations General Assembly. So it shows the volume, the magnitude, and the importance of the issue around loss and damage and financing, as well as for justice. So again, it's a part of the United Nations Human Rights Council, and many as a part of UPR, also even part of the TT bodies reporting, especially by the civil society organization, the issue of climate change and loss and damage has been already manifested there. So it has been part of the debate and discourse also with the UN human rights committees so far. So it's a very good progress so far. So I'm coming towards almost towards the end as a part of the recommendation for future direction. Yes. Well, first of all, we need to clean our house. If you want to raise hand towards your neighbor, you need to clean your house first. So we need to have first domestic laws and policies and the coordination between our own agencies for awareness building. Readiness means preparation, and also reaction means response whenever it is necessary. So it's not only stretching our begging bowl to the international community and asking for money, but prepare yourself with regards to your own laws and policies and other coordination, etc. at home. And the other is create a supportive environment here for research. That also applies to stakeholders even beyond the nation-state border, in terms of research, in terms of analysis, in terms of evaluation of the loss and damage, and also to guide for laws and policies, because as I mentioned earlier, that we don't have sufficient data on the loss and damage. Without proper data, planning and advocacy would not be highly smart and successful. So the supportive environment and even funding and investment is required. The third one is about participation on a global scale and involvement of national and local players. So it's not only high level, ministers or prime minister or the top level bureaucrats participating in the at the global level, but also other stakeholders, experts, and civil society organizations will have some kind of say in both in the national and international kind of forums and forums. Okay, and early adaptation is so important in terms of domestic coordination, because prevention is better than cure. On the basis of that particular notion, yes, we need to start seizing the opportunity well in advance before the major loss has been on the forefront. Okay, so that is very important. And solid legal framework to ensure victims of human rights violations because of the climate change and also also seeking justice in real life is so much important. So this could be so creating a legal framework both at domestic level or by what do you call sub-regional level or regional and international level, because that would open a corridor for actually for legitimate to lodge our legitimate concern to the proper judicial system, because that is what is lacking at this stage. Okay, I just talk a little bit about the loss and damage transitional committee, because this committee is very important, to deal with all this kind of development towards creating a concrete and solid kind of framework and arrangement for for funding. So there's the funding to be designed not only on rapid onset kind of impact, but also on saving lives, protecting livelihood, even talking about decreasing disease morbidity, diseases, etc. Not only talk about types of activity and duration of activity, because it's a long-term investment is required. So, and then again, loss and damage again to start in early stage of the hazard event. Let's not wait until the full account of damage done. I already mentioned about that. I don't want to repeat it again. Flexible timeframes for funding to encompass both short-term and long-term activities, because mostly people want to fund for the short-term for highly visible kind of adversarial impact. But again, I said that we're talking about long-term, longer-term impact. For example, what happens in the Hind-Kush Himalayas, HKH, where in another 77 years, 1/3 of the snow will be completely gone, 10,000 rivers will be impacted, and the whole lower basin and the civilization will be impacted, particularly in South Asia, especially in eight countries, 8 countries here in South Asia. So that's why long-term investment is so much important. I'm just giving one example from South Asia. Okay, and then adopting a broad perspective to the consideration of loss and damage action and funding. So widen the perspective, not a narrow down one time kind of piecemeal approach, but a broader everything should be put within the broader radar perspective. And investment should not be done in isolation. For example, non-economic loss and damage, or just one migratory flow, or slow onset event. Not in isolation. It should be part of the flexible long-term approach. Again, I'm stressing this because there are organizations, there are funders, there are resource partners who would like to fund on for migration or refugees, one-time refugees, big influx of refugees, intervention, etc. Or only non-economic part only. But no, there should be a comprehensive approach in terms of funding. So this is how the transitional committee on loss and damage should work. This is should be our part of the advocacy. So again, a little bit focusing in South Asia, saving the snow is also saving civilization. So we want to see the Himalayas, for example, like this, where there is a habitat on the mountain, where there is light, the life is there, life is beautiful, life is bright, and it is the place is fitting, to live and to grow the civilization there. But it applies to sea level rise. It applies to other situations as well. So these are the progress made so far with regards to loss and damage and access to justice. Once again, what I would like to stress is that this is a legitimate concern now, okay? Because until 10 years ago, the climate change was some of the even top leaders of the world were talking about loss and damage is like a hoax. I even remember the American president at one point of time saying that loss and damage is a hoax. This is not real. But now you can see every day the damage is being caused, that is already been seen so much, experienced so much. So this is the time, especially for human rights defenders, especially for the legal fraternity and other experts, to really focus our attention and our strategy on this particular thing, because it's going to impact our generation to generation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Gopal, for your good presentation. And we just learned that loss and damage was clear, but it was not yet implemented or structured. So we need more discussions for concretely utilize this mechanism, either you're the funder or receiver or donor or your vulnerable person. Thank you. And also your message is that we have to start from ourselves is also a good one, because even though we know that climate change is real and climate change affects everyone, we know that there's a different responsibility and a different perspective according to your situation. So first, we need to start by ourselves forming the good structures in terms of legal environmental issues, but also we also need to generate a social norm to protect climate change. As we have just seen that there's a climate ambition summit in September at the UN General Assembly, and we see lots of world leaders are pledging to protect climate change, to tackle with climate change, but we don't see any good change in the coming years. So the concept of loss and damage and also climate justice are key, especially for civil society. So I think your presentation is also good collection of data. Okay, thank you, Gopal. And now I'd like to move on to the Q&A sessions. If you have any questions to Gopal's presentations, please raise your hand or use the chat box. Anyone dare to start? I see the comment from Gulam Nabi Nizamani on the pilot project. Can you share it if you can? And explain what you want to share in the chat box. You are able to see that. Gulam Nabi Nizamani.
Good morning. I am Ghulam Nabi Nizamani from Pakistan, from Sindh province, which is very much affected from climate change. And we have seen droughts in a desert area, which is also half of the Sindh province is desert area. And we also have seen floods, and we have also seen cloud busting. And in all situations, we have seen that the vulnerable groups are much affected than any other segment of the society. Because the person with disabilities or older people, they are always left behind. And they give the reason that these people should look after our homes, which we are evacuating because of this disaster, and maybe people not take away our belongings. I think Krishna Gopal ji can understand my point of view very well, because we both are from the South Asia, and we know very well South Asian culture. My question is only that if any organization of person with disabilities or vulnerable groups, those are not much stronger to fulfill requirements for such big funding like loss and damage funding. So how can these people or their organizations could be engaged in the anticipatory approach? Because before of the disaster or before of the anything, if we feel any hazard, because this hazard is that climate, because of climate change, and this can come. So how can anticipatory approach they can adopt to save their livelihood and to save their own lives and to prepare if a disaster come, how could be the shelter where they will be rescued, and after that what could be the rehabilitation for such people. So this was my question. Thank you very much for time.
Okay. Uh, all right. All right. Mm. Shall I try to answer this?
Yes, please, Gopal.
Okay, thank you so much, Gulam Bhai. Very, very pertinent questions you have put so far. In fact, there has not been much kind of progress with regards to, talking about the people with disabilities, and both ways, disabilities in a normal situation and disabilities because of the, because of the disaster, right? So this is a big, like we're talking about a big volume of population. And so I think at this stage I can recommend and suggest two things. First of all, uh, create a pressure group through the organization or a network at the country level first, or the community level, and that please connect it with this, for example, National Human Rights Commission in your country. I don't know how independent is that, but it would be good to come up with some kind of a blueprint, or kind of a white paper, whatever you like to say. Then come up with what are the exact situation, not a big volume one, but what is the exact situation, what are the exact demands so far, and that should be part of the National Human Rights Commission's agenda items. And then whenever there are there's a representation from the country level and the UNFCCC and like the co-processes, then I think a delegation visit with all these blueprint is a must in Islamabad. So before they prepare for their own position paper to the co-process, I think that this is the time where it needs to be pushed, by the civil society organization. And the third one is about I don't know whether there has been any directives or in Pakistan based on the Sendai Framework Objective E, which is known as words into action. I think please, Gulam Bhai, please note it down, because the Objective E of the Sendai Framework, the name of the book title is called Words into Action, WIA, and then that gives all the operational processes of the people affected due to disaster, particularly people who have been displaced. Disaster displacement issue has been part of that. Pakistan is of course part of the Sendai Framework. So within the Sendai Framework, there is Objective E, okay, E for England, E, and that has got some processes, and take that as part of your advocacy, because it talks about the step-by-step intervention to be carried out by the stakeholders, by the state, by the local government, by your provincial government, by the federal government, etc. So if you take that as a tool, then that will be a very, very convincing kind of advocacy tool for you. So that is what I think you can do, both at domestic level and as well as at the global arena through the country delegation. That's what I can suggest at this stage. But let's keep talking, Gulam Bhai. I know you are really, really into this business, then let's exchange information. And I can also send you, if you require, the Objective E I just mentioned about it in English version. We've also translated that into Nepali, and then so we are trying to develop it as a directives, so that everyone will be accountable and responsible, to act in accordance with the procedures of the directives based on Objective E of the Sendai Framework. Thank you.
Thank you, Gopal, for your detailed answer. Thank you, Gulam, for raising the question as well. So, before we close the session, do you have any final questions to Gopal, Urna, or Dr.
See, can I hear me?
Oh, yes, hi.
Oi?
Oh, Harsh bhai, hello, namaste, how are you?
Namaste. No, see, the very interesting conversation. I am just motivated to contribute, although I am not in a position to that much experience holder on the subject. But if you see, we are living in a era when there is some sort of a climate emergency is there all around us. Last, last I think 2 years, 3 years, we had COVID. That was a health calamity. But now, if you see, this climate calamity is right on the doorstep. If you take example
It
of
is.
India in this monsoon, which was supposed to, go back, but even then rains were coming. Since I think even for the last week we are facing rains. So the nature of this climate has changed. You have cloud burst, you have, what happens in Himalayas. It's a very fragile. Gopal, you know it better because you all live there. And Himalaya is not far away from Delhi also. It's a very fragile range. But the way in which we all have managed our nature, that it is coming back to us. So I think for that it is very necessary. Like a lot of investment is done by the state, especially in India. I see, I don't know about other countries. Like they have NDRF, National Disaster Management Act is there, that there is a separate dedicated force is there to manage all those things. But these things are more like a curative methods. Hardly anyone is interested in preventive part of it. I think that is very important today. Because in curative you need more resources, but in preventive you don't need much resources. You need a will and participation of the community. So very nice, Gulam bhai, very nice. Thank you.
Super. Thank you so much, Harsh bhai, for your very timely kind of intervention and piece of observation. I truly appreciate that.
Yeah. Thanks. Urna, do you want to make some comments? Yes, please.
Hello, Urna sister, how are you?
Hello, thank you. Hello, everyone. Yeah, it's very good. Thank you very much, Kapal. Yeah, the presentation was really interesting, because I learned a lot of from this presentation, because everyone actually now already sensing and feeling how this climate change already impacting everyone's life, not just those who are very vulnerable, but all those who are living in cities in quite secure conditions, etc. But even though, there is very low understanding of this, how to deal with this, how to deal with this. And the quite number of civil society organizations in Mongolia, for example, now entering onto this issue now. And they already started talking about the mitigation and about the adaptation, etc. And they tend to criticize, for example, to mitigation quite big resources, spent, but for adaptation there is, less, etc. And then also there is a misunderstanding or not very good understanding between the difference of loss and damage, and every time when people talk, they just use both words and then had the same meaning, they don't really differ. And from your presentation, I actually got some differences. So thank you very much on this. And what I want to also, it was very interesting for me that this issue on climate impacts issue, it already relates to the people's rights, and it already goes to Human Rights Council, to UPR, etc. So and then you also talked about the mechanisms. So I think that it's very important, but unfortunately I see that it's still in process, but still it's becoming quite closer, but still it's in process. It's not really in operationalizing, it seems to me. And then what I would like to know more is that you a little bit mentioned about the building case laws, case laws, demanding the people's right, to get this reparation or restoration from this climate change loss, but not loss, maybe damages, right? So in this regard, what would you, suggest or recommend, to see or to read through any reference, so it would be really good, because I think that we have quite a number of civil society organizations who are doing public interest litigation, and I think that it would be very good for them, to read and to know about this. Yeah, thank you very much. It was very good presentation and the study, materials, and I hope that I will be able to look more carefully, more seriously afterwards on your PowerPoint presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sister Una. It's good to see you here again. And then the question is very, your observation is very, very significant, and your question is also equally important. Well, when I'm talking about building a case law, unfortunately, in our part of the world, in Asia region, there is no any regional court, human rights court or anything here. So whatever case we try to build up based on PIL, as you already mentioned, I was gonna actually say that already, that someone as an what do you call it, emblematic case, a case needs to be lodged as a part of the PIL in any of the domestic court and basically in the Supreme Court, and then that if there will be a kind of victory, then that will set a precedent. That will be a precedent, and that will when there will be a landmark judgment, then that can be kind of set as a precedent and can be replicated to other countries as well. But there has been some exercise as a part of the European Human Rights Court in Strasbourg. So I would send you that particular process, what is going on in the European Court of Human Rights. Okay, so whenever there are regional human rights court, it is possible because people still can file a case there. Because because as I mentioned earlier, that the loss and damage may not be caused by the domestic factor, right? And then so it requires international or cross-border, kind of response, right? So for example, just an example only. I don't have any information. For example, if France is involved in creating a damage in Romania, for example, or in other countries in Europe, probably. Okay, I'm not blaming anyone at the moment. Okay, just an example only. Then the case can be built up to the regional human rights court in Strasbourg in France, for example, right? Yeah, but here we don't have a regional mechanism as such, right? So, but still we can build up that. We can build up not only as a part of the court, kind of court case law, but we can always have a, place to lodge these things. For example, in ASEAN, like IHR, the Human Rights Commission there. Okay, maybe IHR, but Mongolia. You're not part of ASEAN, are you? No.
No, we are not.
Okay. So those countries or the member countries can still build up this case, but not as a court case. Okay, but the only avenue at the moment is a domestic court, and then so if there will be any landmark decision, as I mentioned earlier, that can be very strong tool for other legal fraternity to lodge the case. But again, justice here is not always confined to the domestic process, because the developing countries like ours, or underdeveloped countries like ours, or least developed countries like ours, we are not the culprit. We are not the contributor. We are not the contributor to climate change. Or even if we are less than 0.001%, right? But so the culprits are somewhere else. So that's why this should be built up as a case of international attention, right? So that's how I feel at the moment.
Thank you, Gopal, for your answers, and
Thank you very much.
Yeah. Thank you, Irina, for the questions, and thank you, Gopal, for your answers. So we are almost finalizing the sessions, and thank you once again, Gopal, for your good presentations. And we learned a lot about climate change and ocean damage and access to justice as well.
My pleasure, Aoi and friends. My pleasure.
Yes, and I hope we can keep discussing on these issues in the coming webinar. So before we close, let me briefly explain the next webinar, which will be held on Saturday, 11th of November, with title Closed or Expanded, Civic Space in Asia Today. And we invite Jyotsna Mohan from Asia Development Alliance, Dr. Mark Pignol-Rovira from Asia Center, and Jia-Ul Rehman from Pakistan Development Alliance. And they are speaking about the general election in Cambodia and also civic space situation in Pakistan. So I'm going to send you the registration soon to your email. So please register through the link, which is will be detailed in the mail.
By the way, Aoi, both Jyotsna and Jia are in town, are in Kathmandu. We are attending a same meeting here on UNESCAP Sustainable Development Goals related meeting. It's a regional meeting going on here. It will be over today. I'm going to see them this afternoon again.
Okay, I got it. Okay, this is the second webinar, and the third webinar is expected in December 2023, and with the title Responsible Business and Human Rights in Asia. So we invite Bani, India, CHRD, Mongolia, and the NFN from Nepal. So we are going to soon announce the exact date and time and who's going to speak during this third webinar. So please make sure that you also attend both November and December webinar. Thanks. So this is the end of the webinar number 1, and thank you for your active participation. And we'll see you in November. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Sayonara. Bye, everyone.
Bye.